Gary Grandstetter canceled at 10 minutes after 6. So he will not be here this evening. Okay, that was enough said about that.
The city's holding a meeting tonight.
It was at 5.
Meeting.
It was at 5.
Oh, was it?
Yeah. So anyway, point of business, if you haven't paid your dues, they're due. Rocky will give you hours, Marcia, at the end of the meeting. And as you probably know, because Rocky and I have written a lot about it, solar, it's solar this, it's solar that. New York Solar, everybody's solar. Solar is the popular word for alternate energy, meaning we don't like oil and we don't like gas, we like solar. So the town of Plattsburgh last year, Basil knows about it, and John, I'm looking at you going, what the hell's your name? Senior moment. John knows about it. Thought about, actually, let me back up a little bit, maybe over a year ago, the town discussed some solar lights, street lights. They wanted to do some street lights with solar. And there was a comment made by town councilors that, after all, it's free. Of course, being in a taxpayers group, there's no free. Somebody's paying, and it's usually the taxpayers, some way or another. It's always the taxpayers, some way or another. And I thought that was very disingenuous from a councilor on the town board to say that street lights would be free if they were solars. Then we go a few, 6, 7 months, and we find out that the town is contemplating a solar array. And the solar array, they worked on that right up to the point of contract, at which point Basil and I were at the meeting and we started querying the town about the taxes, which the contract said the taxes would be paid by the town, i.e. the town taxpayers would pay any taxes due on this solar array. Well, we began to think about, Bernie Bassett actually said in that meeting, if you watch the video, well, you know, if we can't do something about the outstanding taxes on this solar array, which would amount to, Brian, what were they going to be in the 40,000 for the school and plus all other district taxes which had to be paid, the town wasn't going to be making anything, saving anything on this solar array. And saving, I say in quotation marks because we've paid an awful lot already for it. You know, Bernie said, you know, that's going to break us, and we're not going to go forward if something's not done about the taxes. Well, something wasn't done about the taxes, and right now it's kind of on the back burner. I'm going to say it hasn't faded away, but it's on the back burner. Now we are doing solarize Plattsburgh, solarize in town of Plattsburgh, solarize this and solarize that, and there's incentive money which is being funneled through the town of Plattsburgh, grant money, which is just to publicize that solar energy is out there and it's being advocated. So, most people don't realize that when you put up a solar array, be it in the town, in the city, in the county, on your house, it's not just pop the solar array up and then start making the big bucks because you're no longer paying for electricity. It doesn't work that way. There's where the tax comes in. As soon as you do something to your house to improve it, it gets reassessed. This is where Brian comes in. You have a reassessment, and that reassessment will also change your tax bite. So when you decide to put up a solar array, or a municipality decides to put up a solar array, how that array is put up and how they're assessed is important to crunch in your figures in order to see if it's really a viable project or not. My gut feeling was that in the beginning, all that wasn't taken into consideration because at one of the meetings, town council said we need to, he actually asked the Solar City sales gal, how much the solar array, which the town of Plattsburgh was planning to put up, would be assessed for, and she said $2 million. And that's where, I think you were there that night, and Vazo's little, accounting brains are going, and I could hear that, and mine did too, and I'm no accountant, and that's where the big elephant in the room got presented, and the project kind of fell apart at that point. So anyway, I've asked Brian to come here tonight to explain about the assessments in solar arrays and really what's kind of going on with this whole solar array bit.
No.
Be it on your house or...
Some of this, I don't know if you're going to be able to see. So, I guess Deb said, come out here and first let's talk about valuation and then we'll talk about the exemption. Right? Let me keep you on track.
Go for it, it's all yours.
I tried a PowerPoint presentation. Anyway, this is a simple thing. This can be found anywhere. This is on Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac's website, FHA website. It's the definition of market value. Basically, it is what I attempt to do through mass appraisal. It is what an appraiser will do for you on your mortgage or your divorce or your estate planning or whatever else if there's a value involved. Okay, it's just quick. It's easy. It's easily found. Real or personal property. The court has stated that solar arrays are fixed to the ground or affixed to the house. It is real property and should have a value attached to it. That's basically what this slide says in a short, brief manner. If you'd like to read them, no.
So the state said that, correct?
Yeah, the state of law, the real property tax law 10212B. So once it's permanently affixed to the land or the structure, it becomes real estate. And it has to have a valuation. As such, though, it's taxable. It qualifies for the exemptions, which we'll get to a little bit further down the line.
Well, it's included in your slide, as a matter of fact.
I hate reading them, but I need guidelines. In real estate valuation, it doesn't matter what the property is. There is standardly 3 approaches to value. However, the more complex a property gets, the more diverse your approach to value. Regression analysis, CAMA models, things like that could also play into a direction for value. Standard practice is cost, what it costs to put it there, what it costs to build a house, what it costs to build an array. Market, how much does the house next to you sell for, is what yours is when we do residential. It's the same here. In a large project such as the city or the town, the county is considering a 2.59 megawatt farm, and I believe it was 2.25 town. Anyway, those become an asset to an investor, so that is a market thing. It has a shelf life, and as such, it has a value. And the investor now, you're not looking at your residential array, you're looking at the large one, is going to have certain parameters. So, market is a thought. We'll get to it. And then income is another way to value real estate or an asset. All right? Everything has its strengths and weaknesses. When you do a valuation on a property, you're trying to address all the approaches. You can't really figure income on single-family houses for the fact that the motivations there are different than the investor on a 4-unit or 6-unit. So, but at the same time, cost, market are the way and the direction to approach to value. Cost approach is applied. The cost approach, you can do either a exact replica, which can be pricey for 70 years down the road, or a replacement of similar utility. And most lending institutions want to see replacement of similar utility, because let's take that 1870s house and try to replicate it. It's really not something that's going to be viable cost-wise to dowel out all the pegs and holes and do the whole 9 yards that they did back then. The cost approach typically ends up being the highest indicator of value because it is only accurate for the moment that structure or building was constructed. Right? As time goes on now, factors called depreciation start playing into it. Appreciation on the land that's underneath it. So things things are moving in any direction when it comes to cost. Cost approach is predicated on the principle of substitution. These are some of the things Fossil already knows.
One would hope.
When it comes to the solar array, the cost approach does not address anything to do with the money that it can make, okay? It doesn't address power purchasing agreements, it doesn't address incentives, it doesn't address anything. So, and here I'll have to read a little bit. The cost approach, as I said, makes the upside, but the cost approach, when developed, has to be used on what today's values are, right? So your solar array a year ago is more expensive than it was today. And your solar array 3 years down the road is going to be cheaper than the one is today. So as we state, like, it was a year ago we started working with Solar City at the town. They gave us a number based on values of materials a year ago. That's not valid today. It would have to be redone. You know, that's how quickly this industry is changing.
Could I ask a question here? I mean, can we
Yeah.
jump in while you're doing this?
Sure.
So that would mean that if the town had gone ahead with a 2 million solar array, then each year you would have to reassess it?
Pretty close to that, yeah. Because it has a different, we'll get to the answer to
Okay.
yes down a little bit further.
Okay.
Utilizing a related, okay, so when we construct a building, anybody, right? The guy who's building the house deserves profit. So you're paying for it when you buy the house, right? Bill Broadbent gets his, when you buy a house in Heritage and so on and so forth. Entrepreneurial profit or developer profit. When you get into these projects, and I'm not relating to the house right now, but it does relate to the house. And we'll get to that later too. But in this larger project, where's the entrepreneurial profit? You know, they're saying this is the cost, but they're not showing their profit. And I'll show you this a little bit more. So placing too much weight on their approach of cost when it indicates high versus the market or the income. If it's too low, what they're saying is you got to have a weighted average of the three different approaches to value. Blah, blah, blah. Sorry.
Doesn't that give you an automatic market when you're building something?
Not necessarily.
Well, if that person who chose Bill Brudvig to build a house is agreeing to pay him $300,000 to build the house, that's the market in a way to say that that gentleman is willing to pay that. So that cost
Correct.
approach for that first year would be your most,
Is the highest relevant point
Point,
of the
right.
So when
it's almost a
when
transaction.
that
even though
house
it's-
closes, exactly, when that house closes, it's closed for 260, that's that guy's assessment, because at that moment in time, he chose to build or buy that particular structure rather than the one around the corner
Correct.
that had the same amenities and features and utility. So, yes,
Okay.
your point is valid. But after that point in time, because of our depreciation and the changes in marketplace, this cost starts falling apart. After the first 8 years, you're replacing the water heater. After the first 20 years, now we're looking at roofs and structure, you know, so that changes the physical life of structure. The bare bones is going to be 20 years old, but the interior could be, hey, we went through the kitchen and flooring, you know, so. The cost approach with depreciation, functional, walk-through bedrooms aren't, right? So that would be a negative to a house. Economic, hard to say. You would say the airport, but that's not true. But an influence that has noxious boiler set up in your neighborhood could influence the whole. Okay, so those are obsolescences. One's external, one's functional, and physical. The market approach typically develops when there's sufficient data. Well, there is no sales in New York State of solar arrays. Okay, so in this aspect, the market approach is really not able to drive. However, in my internet research, there are sales in Europe. There is some reportings on what goes on and et cetera, but that's a whole nother realm.
Now you're talking municipal solar arrays, or are you talking even solar
Private.
arrays on houses?
Private. Well, solar arrays on houses are something different again,
Exactly.
right?
So we're talking more activities
We're
than that,
talking
something
private
like that.
arrays. No, we're talking about generating, you know,
Farms, okay,
Okay?
yeah.
But if we were to find enough sales, you do your comparison, blah, 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 and at the end of the day, we're gonna say the cost of a kilowatt hour based on the market is this. This is the size of your farm, this times this is the value of your farm. That's how basically it would work in the market approach, okay? The problem is location, location, location. You know? So in some discussions with the county, I've been told how to do this, and I was like, that's fine. If you identify one sale on the same latitude that Plattsburgh is, anywhere in the country, I would consider it. They can't. Anywhere in the country. So how do you use the market approach when it comes down to a 2.5 megawatt farm or 1 point thing or your house? Can't do it. Some of the pitfalls, lack of data, not current data, hidden things within PPA agreements that aren't introduced, that are relevant to the investor purchasing the solar farm, that make values skewed. So the market is not a good approach. Where else do we go then? The last approach value is income. Valuation methods based on income approach use all the expected economic earnings capacity of the solar asset to estimate the value. The approach considers all the contracts, all the incentives, and in a lot of our industry, it is the most relevant method to valuing the array. Income approach uses either direct capitalization as a snapshot of 1 year, or a discounted cash flow, which is a snapshot of the life of the investment. Okay. The most endorsed method of valuing a solar farm is this approach using a discounted cash flow, because when we're investing in this, basically it says, based on the fundamental financial premise that the value of any investment is the present value of the expected future benefits. Okay? And it's hard to realize, but if I have an investment, I have my pro forma. At the end of the day, I find that, boom, boom, here's the value. I got something out of it, right? And I can do that year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, all right? But I stand on year 1, I don't know what year 5 is going to be. So we calculate out what you would want per return. You discount that value, and the new guy buys it, basically in a short, oversimplified manner. The income approach, this approach addresses the physical depreciation. It addresses the replacement schedules. It addresses the degradation factors on the cells. It addresses the energy increase anticipated, you know, at a specific rate over time. It is not by any means foolproof, but it really considers a lot of the other external factors that the cost approach doesn't do, or the market approach can't do, when addressing value. Some of the pitfalls that I didn't realize, but somebody might just say the initial loan to value is what a rate would be, and in here it says weighted average cost of capital, and what that is the equity position, lenders, the debt position, mortgage position. So there's a return expected. The lower the return, the safer the risk. The higher the return, 14, 15, you're looking at student housing because you're looking at a greater risk. So risk reward with investment. Now, I don't know if you can see this, and I don't think I can get it any bigger. Honestly, I really don't. This was taken on the very last page, and I'll give Debbie a copy of it, the links that you can go to. This is on NYSERDA. This is on the State of New York's webpage, someplace. NYSERDA advertises, doesn't advertise, they just, here's our thing, and here is what has happened over a course of time. So basically, the project install dates, 12, 13, when the project was, who did the project, I don't know what other stands for, where it was, blah, blah, blah. Project costs and setups. I arrayed this from kilowatt on the nameplate, from high to low through the whole thing, okay? And and I blocked off a couple of things here because these were some of the discussions we had at the county level. The county's looking to put in a 2.56, so this is a kilowatt, so a megawatt farm, that would be a 6 megawatt farm, that's a 2.9 down to a 1.8 megawatt farm, right? And then I took the project cost and I divided it by the nameplate, and I came up with a simple, what the price per kilowatt based on the nameplate was. Just a very simple comparison type of thing, you know, things that apples to apples, whatever. And then I arrayed it and I said, all right, fine. When they're in this farm size, between 1.8 and 2.6, it's about 4,300 per kilowatt nameplate. So I take the farm that the city, or the county is looking for, and I would get an $11 million build. Well, 2.9 was $15 million build in Staten Island. All right, Staten Island, understand the land, blah, blah, blah. So some of this, would be logically, we would get rid of it. But in the end of the day, 1.9 costs $8 million. They're telling the county it's gonna cost them 4.4 to build it. All right, I have a problem with that. If it's gonna cost Solar City 4.4 to build a 2.6 megawatt farm, what is going on here? You're talking about $4 million difference.
Is one of those Solar City?
No, there's none that large, no.
Okay.
So then I did it again for the town, right? And the town was looking at a 1.25, and I actually went too low on my study. I'm at 1, and I should have gone a little higher. But still, it says about 4,300 per kilowatt nameplate. Same kind of result. The $5 million tag is about what? It's a little higher on this than with that. So I think when they report some nice service and things, who knows?
So you're saying that what you felt the proper assessment on that piece of property, is that for the county or the town down here?
Bottom one's
The
a-
bottom
Bottom
one's
of the town should be more like 5 million as opposed to the 2 million that the salesperson said it would be.
Correct. But it wouldn't, now we're using the toss approach to nice service, so.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's
This is
fine.
this is not right.
No, but that's one other
This
piece
was,
of
well, this
evidence.
is, you know, to verify where I'm going, because when you sit there and you say, if they're turning in numbers at 3 million to build an array of that size,
A little teeny.
doesn't that apply to Plattsburgh too? You know, isn't the cost, if you're gonna name it at New York State to get your incentive check back, then doesn't that work in our area? It worked in Albany, it worked in Cohoes, it worked in wherever else. This list is online and the link is at the very end here. Easy enough for anybody to go and look.
Well, the prop, go ahead.
Go ahead. If somebody has it on their house, would you assess it based on a square foot? Would you come up with a square foot price?
I'll get to that in just a second.
That's coming.
It is on part of the whole agenda, we can write. So but to the next step, all right? This is the size of, we don't have my headings here. These are the size of the arrays that you would be putting on your house, all right? And I don't know if I have, there's Solar City, a couple of them, Solar Liberty, Seabright, you know, a bunch of others. And what happens, and this is the residential section. This is why, and this is in support of that incentivize the Adirondack coast. Your cost per kilowatt is now at 5,800. When we were at that 2 and the 1, it was 4.3. Now it's 5.8. That's $1,500 per kilowatt hour swing. That's significant. That's one of the reasons that they're trying to get a whole bunch of little guys together so that they can go to one provider and say, give us this deal. All right, to be on the cheaper end of upfront purchase, basically. That's what I see from this data. This, in a sense, to support what they're trying to do. This is just it's in there. The Appraisal Institute is the, I would call them the God's evaluation in the United States, probably. I don't know if Boston would disagree. They are premier in their education, requirements and stringence. They have established MAI designation that is court recognized. So the Appraisal Institute is a very thorough place. When you take ethics with them, you don't ever want to look at real estate. It scares you. basically, the Appraisal Institute endorses the income approach to the valuation of a solar array. All the little data here is saying the same thing. And it endorsed a thing that says, and I'll read the first line. The Institute has announced its support for a new tool that will assist appraisers and others seeking to establish value of solar power features. The spreadsheet was developed by Solar Power Electric and Sandia National Laboratories. It wasn't even created by the Institute, but it was created by a guy who was a graduate of the Institute and a couple others in Florida who are very familiar with energy. So the website is called pvvalue.com, and this is how I value solar arrays if required in the county or in the town of Plattsburgh. This is the discounted cash flow methodology. The webpage here has been kind enough to do a lot of stuff in behind. To come up with the value of this solar array, I have, not the square footage, I get all the parameters of that solar array. The size of it, its inverter, the expected life on the inverter, the energy, whatever the prevailing. So here I ran this as of February 17th, okay? So you can see the discounted rate has high, average, low. So they do the math for the expected returns for you on here. I use Banker Road. I put a 10,000 watt array in, or 10 kilowatt, which would be a normal house. The inverter is slightly smaller than it is, but most of them I find the inverters slightly smaller, but they produce more energy than the actual array says. Interesting concept. And when all said and done, when it goes through it, it gives me a value for this 10 kilowatt array on your house. Estimated out value is 15,000 average, between 14 and 17,000. High, low, and average on where your discount is. I can tell you for a fact that a 7.2 kilowatt gig built on somebody's house cost them $38,000. 16 of it was the hardware. Not what was provided to me by the vendor, because I went out on the market and I looked up that particular sun power solar panel and what it would cost, and I looked up the cost of the inverter, and then I added it all up outside of what the vendor's selling for, because the incentives are in there. So all that you get when you buy one of these things usually is, this is the size, here's the price. You don't really get a breakdown of where the labor is. And I think the guy, if he knew for 3 days there was $17,000 worth of labor there, might have renegotiated some of that purchase. That's where we get into the discussion on developer and entrepreneurial profit being in line via the cost approach. That's why it doesn't work out. This is via income. Now this is using the anticipated benefit of the energy generated over the course of 25 years. This is using
25 years.
Yeah, this is using a 25-year life. With the replacement inverter calculated in 15 years, et cetera, et cetera. So,
Where are you getting your expected rate of return?
on this one,
Anyway, I mean, it's an arbitrary number based on what you think someone would want. If they had to spend $30,000, they have a choice of spending it on this array or spending their $30,000 somewhere else, and that's what their expected return would be. And they say, well, I'm not buying that if I'm not going to get
right.
5% rate of return or 3%.
In this case, they're saying, right, on a high end, I want 5%.
And so how do you determine that rate though? Because that's a very arbitrary number, and it's obviously that number drives the entire valuation.
It would be a constant, as like a mortgage amortization constant. In the back of the book on your things, you'll be calculating out what you expect. So the further down the time frame, my constant's going to give me less of a present value than if it was here closer to me.
Right.
So.
But you're saying right
you
now,
said
who's getting a 5% rate today, I guess is what I'm saying. So if there aren't any, why would we use
If you were to
that?
buy this array, you would be starting with the 5% today.
And
That's
who
what
said-
you're.
I would start 5% with what?
You would want your expected discount on the project to be wherever your balance is. This is saying the balance in the given market is going to be 5% in this
5%.
case. At this point in time, this fluctuates, this
Right.
changes. It's based on, I'm sure it's predicated on the energy market itself.
This is Clinton County, right, that you have there?
Yeah, but the discount rate's gonna be relatively the same no matter where you go.
Correct.
Investors gonna pay the same, you know.
So you're saying that's what most people would want to save on their solar array? I mean, is that,
No, not what they
Well,
want to see.
right,
No,
so
we're
an
on the
investor-
wrong page. That's what an investor's gonna pay you for that cash flow.
and that number's coming off from their generic idea?
No,
of
the
what
number probably from them I don't know where it's in the spreadsheet coming up with the
Now
discount.
that I'm thinking about it, though, it
But
could
you
be.
could create it from the equity position
I-
and the mortgage position on the whole thing.
I think that they're probably getting that rate, because all these purchase power agreements, what ends up happening to them is they never stay with the company who ends up doing the work. They're sold as a package, just like mortgage, you're gonna have a bunch of these pieces all put together and say, look, we've got a contract with Town of Plattsburgh for 20 years, the county, and what will you give us for this cash flow? And that's probably the discount rate that an investor is willing to give to say, look, I'm not gonna give you $100,000 for this, I'll give you $95,000. And
Correct.
so he's discounted at 5% because he knows he's gonna get income on it, and I bet you that's where they're getting it. So there is a market out there
Correct.
showing what these things are selling for, because
Correct.
investors are buying them for the stream of
So a
income.
company like Realty Rates or Corp, or Cooper, Price Waterhouse, or something like
Right.
that,
Yeah.
they're tracking it. And then they're tapping these guys for that track,
Okay,
you know? It's a
Yeah.
national average, it's not gonna be a
right.
specific average, or, you know, to our local.
So when you go out to, I put up a solar array and I pay $30,000 for it. So you're gonna come to my house, let's get practical here. What are you gonna do?
Depends on what you do.
Meaning,
Meaning, I go and I inventory it and I put it on the system, that's it.
so how are you going to evaluate it?
I wouldn't know. Because I can tell you right now, there's 4 or 5 that the building permits went up to 13. I don't know what they are. So how do I evaluate it?
I mean, you
They
don't.
said, hey, we're
what do you-
putting in
what
a
do you mean
solar
you don't
array,
know
Steve
what they
signed
are?
off, said, okay. Oh, Triangle Electric said it's okay, fine, boom, here's your CO done.
But on this,
I have no idea what that solar array is in most of the places. No idea.
so when you're looking at this PV value, are you saying that
This is.
you're coming up with an estimate that would actually be lower than what the client is actually paying?
Often, yes.
So going back to that question from an assessing standpoint, why would you not ask for the invoice?
I don't see it. Okay, correct, but why am I going back to somebody 2 years ago and saying, I need your stuff now to put a value on that? Why didn't I do that 2 years ago?
No, why didn't you?
We're not getting the data back, but this is not a topic 2 years ago.
I see.
This is not a topic 3 years ago. This is not an issue
If
until now.
somebody wants to build a house, and
Huh?
you're gonna do a cost approach, when do you ask for the information?
The cost approach, they show me the plans and specs, I run a cost approach, right?
But you're not doing the actual cost approach then. I mean, you're doing it on the national square foot average as opposed to asking the
No,
client what they
no,
actually have a
the-
contract for?
Our RPS-V4 program has Marshall and Swift built into it.
As a what?
Has Marshall and Swift BEC models,
Mhm.
national cost models built into it. So I put in the parameters of the house and I push a button and bling, up comes the cost approach.
But that's not necessarily what the homeowner paid for that house.
True, because local builders price different.
So basically, you're saying that 2 years ago, that's lost, or you're just gonna have to estimate somehow.
What am I gonna do, right? The
But-
inventory isn't on hand, what am, you know, okay, I gotta drive up and specifically say I need the data on your,
I mean,
I think,
Well, it's
yes,
interesting, so the
technically,
zoning
yes, you're
department-
absolutely right, I should be doing that. Which one of you are gonna volunteer to help me do this?
No, but if the
Wait a
zoning,
minute, I'm not lying.
if the
You
zoning
know,
department,
prioritize what I gotta do in my day, and, go and
no,
find
no,
somebody's.
I'm not
solar
going there,
array.
but I'm just saying, that hypothetically, let's say I wanna build a house and I wanna put a solar array on it, and what are you gonna do? How are you're gonna assess that
You would
in the
give me,
price?
if I have,
Give you the specs.
the building
Yeah,
permit
with the
now for solar array has all the parameters I need to do this,
Okay,
okay? And if I get that, I can put it in there and I can say there's a specific value for that array. As part of the house, that's a different thing, okay? We put on the solar array in the construction, so there's going to be a methodology, you're going to be looking for this. I gotta determine what the impact of the solar construction was if we built the house in that manner. I'm adding the array to the house, that's a different story, because it is an independent versus the construction within the green.
In the contract.
In the green theory of the home, right?
What did you do in the case of Gerard Renner?
He's leasing, I don't care.
Well, that's a whole different thing.
However,
That's
I'm
a-
wrong, because it's attached to the building, it should be valued as real estate.
Okay.
But he's leasing the unit. So why am I taxing Gerard for real estate? That he doesn't, it's like I should be taxing the lessor.
That's right.
Brian, could you
So you're
explain?
not taxing anybody?
Not on Jerry, no.
But then why wouldn't it go to the
The only
lessor?
ones that are taxed right now, well, let's continue my
Yes,
exemption. All right?
here we go.
Yeah, this is what we're talking about. This is where we're at. So in 1990, and that's 77 the first time, 1990 the second time, the state of New York, wind, solar, and farm gases kind of thing, or farm energy systems. State of New York writes the law, says, okay, at 15 years, the value of the improvements can be exempted, the solar improvements. It is mandatory, everybody does this. State of New York said everybody has to do this. However, on the local level, you can opt out. All right. So, and again, I said early, Blackbrook and Clinton. I was told by the county that they are opted out, but I can't find them on the state website. So I owe an apology right now in public to both those towns if they provide the thing. I put them in the wrong category, and this is one out on the thing. So. If they did. However, back in 2006, 91, 91, 91, 91, 91, a lot of people jumped out of the program. We're not going to honor the solar exemption. Here's just basically who does and who doesn't, right?
Can you opt out every year or?
No, it's
One's
once
out, okay.
No, but you can come back in, except that if you come back in, it's from the date we come in, it's not retroactive.
Okay.
Okay, so if you built your array last year, you're not getting it. You can, if you build it, if they opt back in and opt forward. 15-year, the exemption stays with the solar asset. It doesn't move with the buyer or the owner. It stays with the thing. So the Sims have 2 arrays out on theirs, and now the buyer there has 2 arrays. The exemption didn't go. It wasn't removed. It just stays there. It's got one is 13 years left, and the other's 15 or 12.
Because it's real property, so it goes
And
with
it's
the
there, and
house.
then he wanted the exemption, he got the exemption. So it's provided and it's given.
Who, Holly Sims, or John Sims got the exemption.
On 2 arrays. One
Okay.
early and then one later again. Okay?
But the person now that bought the house doesn't get anything, no exemption.
No, the exemption's there.
Oh, okay,
It
he's got it.
stays with the solar array for 15
Okay.
years.
Okay.
It doesn't go away. I think it's wait for us to come back. In the exemption though, as all exemptions actually, only your general fund taxes are affected. So the town of Plattsburgh doesn't have a
Town tax.
Right.
It does. The highway is a town tax, even though they don't call it. You can't run highway as a special district. It's a town tax, 96 cents or wherever we're at now. I know, it's craziness. And then the county doesn't accept it, and schools, whatever, et cetera, et cetera.
The county does not accept the exemption?
Right, you pay taxes to the county, they've opted out. What's not included in the exemption are your special districts, your water, your sewer, your lights,
Most of your
your
taxes.
ambulance, your fire department, which can be kind of healthy in a lot of areas. Now, everybody tends to say, hey, they're fees, to me that's a tax, it's still coming out of our pocket. Bottom line.
One of the things, the clarity, I have no clarity on what exactly it meant that the Sims have an exemption on the array. What
The
taxes do they not pay?
town tax.
In other words, they pay all taxes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Go back one,
And go back. Oh.
go back one. I think it was on the one before
Well,
that.
they're not exempt from the county, are they?
Nope, they're not exempt from the county.
So they have an exemption, but what are they exempt from?
Well,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a
it
good question.
continues. You don't think I'm not gonna answer all the questions before they're asked. Anyway, so, okay, boss, so the exemptions are applied to the general fund only, special districts aren't. Okay, that's the end of that slide. So, I decided I'd try to show people where the cost of this actually happens. So we did a $100,000 house and a $10,000 array, and I know the numbers behind me are kind of small. But the first column on the left would be where you are, if we're sitting on Jean Lefebvre Road and didn't have a lot of amenities or anything like that, where the exemption is applied and where it's not. And I think the biggest thing here is to say, okay, my total taxable with the $10,000 array, the county doesn't recognize it, so you're paying taxes on 110. The highway, town highway is on 100 because I'm going to recognize the exemption. And then special districts and school, I'll discern it. Their total taxes with the solar array and the exemption applied, because I had to raise the assessment, the $10,000 value, right? Derived from the PV thing, because they came in specifically. And when he came in specifically, they gave me the data that I need to create the value for that component
Okay.
of the overall value, right? That component has a fluctuating value over time. That component has a value on year 20. It has a new value on year 19, a new value on 18, because it's in the anticipated benefits of the future return. So as my time shortens down, the value is going to shorten down. So I calculate out the value of a solar array for the Sims every year. And then I adjust the assessment and I adjust the exemption
Of course.
accordingly.
Okay.
You get that, John?
No, he didn't. He was blabbing.
No, we're just making the argument that if without a town tax, the exemption is meaningless to anybody.
No, but he just clarified.
You're correct. And without the county granting it, it's meaningless.
That's
Okay?
Well, it's
Well, in
10,000.
Yeah.
All right, let's go back, John. All right,
It's a
so let's
tax-
go back to the Sims just so John's satisfied.
Okay, John Sims is a guy who lived out here in Cumberland, and he had 2 arrays.
There's 2 arrays. He put one in, and 3 years later, he put another one in. He came in for the exemption, and he came in for the exemption too. Every year, I do, because he gave me at the application, he gave me all the parameters of those arrays. So I can load it into that PV value data, and I come up with a value. And then I say, on an annual basis, your assessment is this much, is the house plus the array. And then every year that's going down, but so does the exemption. So that when he sold his $100,000 house, well, you didn't come down on the array, I had to add the 10,000 for the array, basically is what I did, and then he was exempted out. So then we come to this position. You can see that if this guy bought and put in a $10,000 solar panel and I raised his assessment to 110, at the end, with the exemption, he pays $3,124.73. If he didn't ask for it, and I didn't know about it, he pays $2,850.
So it costs him more to have the solar array up there and that, yeah. Absolutely.
Costs him more to come in and get the exemption.
But the
That's-
thing
Do you
that
get that?
John is, and we all come up with the same thing, is the argument over which you came on with Swamavard. The town says it doesn't have a town tax, but it has a town tax, it's called the highway tax.
Correct.
And for John to hear that argument and to accept it as on its face value means that the exemption does not apply to it. But you have just said that, this business, it is a town tax, and it's all a matter of, if it's only a matter of words, you would not be taxing, or he would not be exempt. If it was just a bunch of words, he wouldn't be exempt from the highway
But it's only
tax.
one piece.
It's only a tiny piece of the highway.
Yeah, this is,
No, he said that.
this is $92 of the whole, yeah, I agree. It's $9 we're talking about in this case, but,
Yeah, but if it's a town tax, it's a town tax, it's exempt from the town tax.
correct, so he's exempt from the
Highway tax, which is a town
Right,
tax.
so the total value is 110, and highways don't pay on 100, I gave it.
That's right, that's exactly right. That's what John was really missed.
Oh.
And that's a
Oh.
very important, though minimal, implication of your full
Well, the other thing
accounting.
is, the value of your house normally goes up.
Yes,
Normally does the array, does that
No,
increase
comes
the
down.
value?
No.
Decrease?
Because it depreciates.
the array is, the value of the array is depreciating as it gets older.
Yeah, but you don't apply that same principle when the entire house is depreciating every day.
No.
So
I'm not applying it to the whole house.
Well, I'm just saying, the theory doesn't make sense because why say the solar array depreciates and give a declining value when the house itself really depreciates? You would have to make an assessment to say, well, the land value appreciated 10% this year, but the roof and the siding and the water tank and decreased by how much?
Right.
Because every house is, you know, you figure even on tax
I'm
laws.
not gonna argue that, I agree with that.
So then why grant that to a
Why would
solar?
I want to sit there and charge John Sims, let's say it's $50,000 on his 2 arrays, year after year after year for the 15 years?
Why do you do it on a house?
Well,
Because the only component that would truly appreciate is going to be the dirt and not the structure, because the structure is forever depreciated.
Yeah, that's why we use the market approach for
The
houses.
market value, see, they use the market approach on houses, but cost approach.
You get that?
Yeah, it is a good question, though, it's interesting,
Oh, no,
you know,
I
it's
know.
very
And if-
interesting to see how these play.
And if then you would make the argument,
We both agree.
but you'd also have to make the
Or
argument
we went through and we fixed some, we cured some of the issues, but not all.
that, right, but you'd also have to make the argument if solar was becoming so popular, why would the value decrease?
It won't. You can make the argument, and it is out there, that it is actually increasing the value of the property.
I don't think it
The
does.
problem that I would have is to show that in our market, and I don't have sales that show it. The only sale of a true known solar array is John Sims.
Right.
And what is the attributory value of those 2 arrays
To the property value.
over the whole property, the acreage and the house and the, you know?
So I guess when you say that having no exemption applied, you're saying that it was cheaper.
Not to even tell me about your solar array. Yes, at the end of the
Well,
day.
that's like anything.
that's
If
just
I don't tell you about my building and my
Yeah, yeah.
shed out in the back, then obviously.
No.
No, it's actually, I would rather know about the solar array. I'd rather collect it. And then I'd rather just let the system do the valuation part of it through the market analysis for rent, for residential houses, right? So I'm going down whatever street it is, and they have them and they don't have them. Well, when I'm looking at my grids, I have your 3 or 4 house comps, and I say, okay, this has an array, I see. And because you're learning it, Carlin's had an array, he sold, okay, or Met's had an array, he sold. And you can say, oh, that's one of the deals, okay. My subject is closer to this because it's got the same amenity. But the sales data, it's going to be supportive of a range. It's just where do you go in that range? You know, my decision processes, right? You trust me to be reasonably accurate or under a little bit. So that's how it's going to pop out residentially in the market. Now, we get 2 identical houses in Cliffhaven or Champlain Park, and one had an array and the other didn't. Can I pull out what that array would be as a market-driven price? Maybe. Maybe. I mean, match pairs, you're not going to really truly get that either. So,
No,
you're asking the right question. How do I do it? You're saying I've got to come up with an answer. I'm sitting there saying I haven't figured it out yet. I mean, honestly, it's a fluctuating thing. I don't know where it goes residentially versus the farm. The farm is much easier
Right,
ball of wax, actually.
yeah.
no, Brian, go ahead.
Solar panel, it's like a car, just wears out.
That's right. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's why I said it depreciates.
That's what I'm saying. So, you know, every year I'm looking at the exemption ones anyway and just saying it's got to go down. It's got to go down. I don't want to tag it because one, if I left it, or pick a middle price and leave it there for the 15 years, just say, okay, it starts at 35, it's going to end at 17, let's call it 25 and leave it. But that guy's paying paying all the special districts all that time. So the consideration has got to be given to the depreciation of that asset, so that the special district and the taxing that goes along with it is declining. It shouldn't, I don't think it should be studied for anybody with this particular type of asset.
Brian, I know you're an assessor, but you have done a lot of looking at solar stuff. This $10,000 solar array that this hypothetical guy had on his house, how much annual savings in electricity does he make on?
That I don't know.
You have no idea?
No, I don't know what Jim Carlin has. I have a paper in there, I didn't even read it. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't
Well,
know.
going back to the solar farm too, I guess the angst that we all had about the town doing it. One, they didn't even know what the current electricity rate was in the meeting, so I said, so how do you know if you're saving? Because really, you were just making the town a utility company.
Yeah,
That's at the end of the day, that's all they were doing. They were giving up the 6 acres of real estate to do it.
right.
But in this scenario, when you're trying to evaluate it on an income base or.
Here they pulled the utility rate right from my site, because they got my address. The utility rate is 9.24 cents per kilowatt hour right now.
For residential,
I think that's residential, yes.
because the commercial rate was lower.
Commercial rate would be low.
Right.
That-
But-
Yeah, because I started this whole thing with property type residential. So yes, it would be different if we put commercial in there,
Sure.
parameters set.
So,
So they're using whatever's present in the day on this.
but in your assessment, whether it's the county or the town, short of a town having to go out and purchase property to put this on, which, whatever, I can't imagine that makes fiscal sense, but in the town of Plattsburgh scenario, did you allocate a value of those 6 acres in addition to the cost that Solar City was saying was going to be to put that array up?
Nope. I had.
Because you're losing that potential sale that they say, if they don't need that land,
Right.
each lot in the town of Plattsburgh got a half an
I did
acre.
not include the 6 acres as a value in that assessment,
The
no.
under- the underlying-
I took the whole array as a commercial entity on the 6 acres.
Yeah.
Is really what I took it as.
But an average commercial person would have to go out and purchase
6
that
acre
real
land.
estate in order to do that, right?
Right.
Ticonderoga School's doing that.
Right, but I know, but when in the argument of the town of Plattsburgh, if it was just the hypothetical
million.
cost, there's a value, there's an opportunity
Yeah.
cost lost in the land,
hotel-
because if the town
hotels-
saying we don't need it,
The hotel
sell
on
it
Route
for
3, they
250
bought the
grand,
land,
put
and
that
now
on
the value of the
tax.
hotel, the land is sucked into the value of the hotel. Whenever that gonna get ever done, but that land was purchased for whatever it was, 5 something, I don't hold me to it, 6. But now, what do I have there? I don't add that land into the value of the hotel. I'm saying, here's the value of the hotel on that land. So this is the way I was approaching the solar arrays. They gave the land, I didn't consider it.
Yeah, but are the values that you're getting when you're looking at those type of resales, or looking at maybe what they're selling those purchase power agreements, if you don't
It has
have
nothing
it,
to do with the land, it's only the energy that they're buying and selling. The potential to earn on the energy
right?
produced.
Right.
That's what,
But
they're
in
not
this-
buying and selling the land, they're not looking at the land when they do that stuff. Those agreements are, those investor purchases are strictly cash, it's not the land.
Brian, why would towns exempt their general fund and highway fund?
Why would they exempt it?
Yeah, why did they,
To give senior citizens or veterans or disabled.
no, I mean,
qualified-
No,
from the
solar.
solar.
Why did they jump in as
Why,
opposed to opting out?
because some towns, town of Plattsburgh doesn't have much, but like the town of Scholar Falls has like a $2 highway tax and a $2 general fund tax
Right.
because they don't take their sales tax money. So there's about, $4 a thousand
So they jumped it out,
they lose out on.
right?
And
Why would the town wanna do that?
why would they want to,
Is there a state incentive for them to do that?
Not on the state level to the towns, no.
No?
That's why
I
they're all
don't
about.
know, it would be good-heartedness. Any exemptions based on the town's community of being good-hearted.
yeah.
Embracing
Agreed.
the technology.
Is the Beacon
No.
Town School in or out, or do we know?
Beekman Town School is in.
So they allow exemptions for solar arrays, but they don't allow exemptions for veterans.
did say that.
That you was
That's what I
right,
just said.
yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So in these town-type farms,
However, let's look at the assessed value lost on solar arrays versus the value lost on veterans exemption in the school. You know, $20 1,000, that's a lot. That's a lot. That would reallocate your tax levy in quite a different direction that may not make every community member happy. That's really what it comes down to.
I think,
I'm not anti-veteran, I'm just saying that's a lot of
Right.
money.
the point is just how much
And
shifting
it's
of
a
cost.
shift.
Yeah, how much shifting are you comfortable with?
because somebody's still got to pay the full cost of that municipality, one way or the other.
Correct.
So everybody else picks up the
Correct.
cost.
So you get retired colonels say, I don't need this, yet you have non-coms saying this would help us out. And you're right, across the demographic scale that we just talked about, you're right. You know, but I don't know.
So if all the veterans moved into one town, nobody would be
That's a
paying any
community
tax.
effort, not mine.
How would the town survive?
Well,
The
they
vet, yeah, but you wouldn't normally
No,
have,
you got
the
exempt. They
veterans
get that
tax
exempt.
usually wouldn't be 100%. Like it is now, it's like 10% or something
Right, it'd be
like
10 or
that.
15, but.
It would never.
But the rates would just have to be offset.
It was a significant change for the town, for the Beacon Town School District, because it's been a while back.
You didn't have Beacon Town in there.
Oh, I had Beacon down there.
It was
There you
pretty
are.
Now,
Awesome.
what year did the town of Plattsburgh give an exemption for solar? Do you know that?
They pulled it.
Oh,
You
so
had,
what's
you
the-
had that they
The
were.
city,
No,
oh,
the
no,
town.
the town of Plattsburgh?
Yes.
Never, they've never, it was
No, you
adopted,
said
It's on
there
the
is.
list.
they grant the exemption.
Yes.
When
It
did
was
they do it?
the state said everybody has to be in.
Oh, so they have to opt out. So they never opted out. And what year was
They
it?
never opted in.
1991. They adopted, state adopted the law in 1990. The town has done nothing. They said, fine, we'll let you go.
Well, that was easy for the town because in 1990, they didn't even have a highway tax.
Well, they didn't have solar either.
No,
So going
but
back-
they didn't have a
This
highway
was-
tax,
this-
so it didn't bother them.
The
They-
solar is a more recent addition to the wind. I think a lot of it was driven by the farm.
The wind farm?
Not the wind farms themselves.
The farmers.
Farmer, right.
Farmer.
And his waste control issues and management for biogas and all that kind of stuff. I don't know.
So going back to
New York
your,
State's quite diverse, one end to the other, so we're only,
going back to the Solar City issue in the town of Plattsburgh,
yeah.
the actual cost would not be known until after the project was done. Because they're not gonna give a guarantee in their contract that that cost was $2 million for you to, for them to have an argument to you to
You
say,
gotta do prevailing wage too, who knows where the.
That's
where
right,
those
because they
costs
never
come
got that far.
well, right, but I'm just saying
You
that,
know, and, I don't know. We gotta get rid of it at the end of 20 years. Nobody's looking at that either.
right.
How do
Demolition
you
cost,
dismantle something that's dead in the water 20 years on 6 acres of land?
so much for being green, because you gotta put it in the landfill.
So,
That's it.
one, go ahead, Mark.
Well, you got.
I was gonna say, I think I remember.
All I know is right, and then who's gonna carry that maintenance, and the town's gonna mow the darn thing, and what you know.
The snow's gonna go on it.
You don't mow it now.
Right, there's, I have
No,
my
it's true,
brother.
it's just added maintenance
I
expense, nobody's
don't,
adding.
I like the concept, but I don't believe the concept made for the North Country, right? And, one of these, well, here, I'll give this to Debbie and you guys can go and look at it. One of these here actually shows you the first one, the Adonis Appraisal Service, solar photovoltaic. It's an abstract. It is very good at explaining everything we had today. And it will show and gives case studies of the same array in Chicago and the same array in Tampa and where the values are different. And then it gives the case study of age and how it affects value. And really, we want it in Tampa and you don't want it in Chicago at the end of the day. You know, you just don't get enough sun. That's really what it comes down to.
Well, the irony too is if you're already factoring in a certain loss based on the weather in your particular geographic area, you've got to build an array that is that much bigger to make up for the loss of generation of electricity. So you're having to spend $3 million to get $1 million worth of electricity.
You're right. I'm not gonna argue that. It's that scale of economics right there.
Right.
But I mean, it's pretty ridiculous maintenance wise when we talk about getting up on the roof and cleaning off these solar panels with a soft,
Brush.
brush and everything else. Yeah, sure. I look nice in my house. It's,
I'll go back to why don't I have them all collected? I'm one guy with only a half a dozen, maybe, or 36 arrays in the town, but where's the maintenance when we're trying to get a sidewalk taken care of? Where's the maintenance when you're making?
Right out here in front of the fire station.
No? Oh, well, we're talking down Route 3, but, right, who's going out there now with a brush and walking through how many panels? 6 acres and brushing them all. That's a lot of work.
Well, Ken would do that.
No, that's a lot of mowing. That's a lot of weed whacking. That's a lot of 20 years. And we come to the end.
Well, the bad news-
Nobody has discussed removal at the end of the term.
I thought that was a
Allocate
contract. I thought
Money
it was
to
in the
do
contract.
that.
It's all
I didn't
to the
see
town.
that.
How about when you gotta replace
Companies
your
don't
roof?
exist.
And you have all those panels up there.
What did you say?
Let's go back to just zoning. He's the resident in the neighborhood. It's zoned residential.
I asked that question, they said they didn't need to ask, and they could zone it whatever they wanted. I said, did you ask the residents? And Bernie stood right there and said, I don't have to ask the residents. He said it in the meeting we were sitting in.
He did.
Yeah, especially now.
I would think that the neighborhood might have
Even the guy
something
right
to say
across the
about it.
I lived right across, I lived 100 feet down the road, and I knew nothing about it until I was one of those meetings.
So in summation of this solar array for the town, the fact is, because the town owned the property and a private company was going to put an array on that property, a utility array, you had to assess it because now it's considered real property belonging
To a private
to a private company.
Private profit entity.
Private profit entity. And so, the town
County
taxpayers were then, whatever you assess that, let's just say 2 million because
Whatever.
the salesperson said 2 million.
Right.
Let's just go there.
60,000 a year in taxes, let's say.
Okay, because the Saranac Central School is 20 plus 1,000, they're looking at 40 grand. And you have all the special districts, which is the Katyville Fire Department, water, lighting districts and all that stuff, which added up to another 5,000 or 6,000. So we're looking between $50,000, $60,000 in taxes. And the town was looking at, depending on the cost to put up that array and prevailing wage, anywhere between $25,000 and $50,000 in savings. So ultimately, they were not going to save a nickel.
No, because the contract designed by Solar City was in Solar City's favor.
That's correct.
It's also in their favor to inflate the price at the end because their kickbacks from the subsidies are based on a percentage of the cost.
I should
So-
have used a nice chart. You know, those numbers I said, that solar array is not $11 million for the county to build, based on those numbers that we just saw from what they give to NYSERDA. No way. I think that's almost 30% too high.
Now, let's take another case scenario. If the town had decided to buy the solar array and put it on there, there would be no tax event. Is that correct?
No, because it would be in ours, a not-for-profit on a not-for-profit land.
Well, could it not be considered a municipal utility?
You would be running up against such a.
The short nature of it is
You would be running
Municipal.
up against the nature, and then somebody's gonna have to delve into what that actually is and what the legality and what you have to provide the rest of your town with.
Okay.
If you have the
If
town.
you did that, you'd have to exempt like powerhouses and that kind of stuff.
Well,
Which, you're right, that, all that, now the utility, I wouldn't even be need to value it.
It wouldn't,
become the
okay.
state of New York.
Okay.
If it's considered a utility, the state of New York does value it.
What day?
You'd have to get a legal opinion from those $600 an hour lawyers.
There you,
Right? I mean, it wouldn't be done locally.
no.
It would be a
No, but
specialist.
not all lawyers charge 600.
Okay, so,
Do it.
so the only thing, so the only, or the other thing, the town could put a solar array on the roof, but it doesn't hold the solar, but it's not strong enough apparently.
And flat roof too. And how old's the roof?
Yeah, they
Let's
have
go
to
back
put them-
Let's put a 20-year solar array on a 10-year roof. Woo-hoo! That's a mistake, huh? So not only do I want to buy the solar array for my roof, but I gotta make sure my roof lasts the time.
Now, over time, let's say I wanted to put, my roof is 15 years old or 20 years old, and I really should be replacing it, but I put a solar array up. Does the fact that my roof is rotten affect your assessment of my solar array?
You're still not getting wet because you got something to cover. Plus, you're expected to have a roof. My sister was solar system, tried to hit her up down when she was down in the Rensselaer County area. And she sat there and said, no. She says, you're taking all the incentives and I don't plan on living here after 5 years.
The average person stays in a home
What's
6 years.
20 years? How do I know? And when we go to sell a house with a solar array,
It's a negative, usually.
right, well, let's say
Could be a positive, could be a negative.
we're in Jim Carlin's house. He pays a lease. So not only do I have to qualify to buy the mortgage, but I have to also add the value of that lease onto it. So not only am I qualifying for my mortgage, but I gotta be able to take the whatever monthly lease he pays
To Solar City.
to whoever. Right, so that has an impact to the value of the property. It really does in a certain aspect. Resale, how do you mortgage? Well, how does the appraiser address that?
Well, how does the buyer address it?
Yeah, as well.
In
Well,
some
it's really
cases, the
the-
buyer doesn't qualify, he can't buy that house. Some
Well,
cases,
But there's also, there's a lien basically because there's a lease agreement to that company.
yeah.
So how do you get around that from a lender standpoint?
Right.
Also, there's.
Because you're not gonna take a second
And
position.
it does create some headaches in the lending and in real estate industry.
Yeah, but there's tax incentives to offset
mess.
some of it.
No, but I'm saying if there is a purchase agreement, if the owner has an agreement with a particular solar company to put that array up and buy it, that's gonna go with that property. Otherwise, the company's gonna say, I'm gonna come and what, take those panels down? So the lender coming into a new buyer is gonna say, look, somebody's already got a position, they already got a lien on this property. How do you get rid of that lien in order for that bank to come in and have full first position?
You have to buy it out.
The seller often, I think, from what I'm reading, the seller.
Pay 'em off.
Pays it off.
You buy it out, you buy the contract.
So now, the other question is, people are putting up these solar arrays, not so much for the exemption part, but for the incentive part. Because the solar industry, in New York, I believe, it might be federal, I think, gives what, about a federal 30% incentive. So if my array is 30,000, I don't have to pay 30% of that, correct?
Right. But I think what I'm looking at and what I see in some of the pricing structures,
They just bump up the price.
But-
They're getting incentive, it's just like Solar City. Solar City was gonna get all the incentives, there was nothing
That's
going
correct,
into town.
because they
so
were
could care
renting.
less how big the array was.
However,
At the end of
those
the day.
incentives are paid for by
Us,
taxpayers.
guess who?
And that's right here, a little piece of paper that says, despite $39 billion in annual government subsidies, solar produces 1/2 of 1% of electricity in the United States. So all these subsidies are part of these incentives, they're being thrown at the companies
sustainability.
because
I think what you're gonna see
solar energy is so
coming-
expensive.
There's an
I think what
ulterior
you're gonna
motive.
see coming is the magnetic engine, and
Yeah.
it just constantly with no thing, you can video right now, YouTube it, you can see this thing generating. Yeah. I see
Further,
them being just huge magnets going spinning around, it's just constantly all the time creating. Turn a flywheel.
Brian, I have a question unrelated to solar. Recently, I think at a work session or something, I heard where the town is hiring a lawyer to challenge the assessment or something
Correct.
on their own.
Nope.
Well, the town has their own attorney.
Did they go in with Beekman Town and the county or somebody?
It's Pyramid Mall.
Yeah, no.
Past practice with Pyramid Mall was, because of the values of the numbers involved, the county would contribute, the school would contribute, and the town would contribute towards a certiorari attorney.
Oh, I thought the town, from what I gathered, I thought maybe they were going it alone, but they're not. They're, because we always did it that way.
Well,
We did 26%.
that aspect, the split with the new school superintendent, some of the past practices are changing. So we are still discussing with Mr. Mannix on how he wants to approach his share of the certiorari attorney.
But we always went 26%, and Beacon Town School picked up.
Right, they were saying 25, 25, 50 or something, is what somebody was throwing at us. But,
They
yes.
say more to gain and more to lose.
Exactly, but Mr. Mannix isn't comfortable with some of the decision processes at the town, and so he has retained his own attorney through the school on this particular issue. The question is Mr. Mannix going to continue with his own attorney, or will he contribute towards the attorney that we have selected?
Do you want to explain what this is about? I don't know if everybody, I don't think.
Pyramid
that
Mall
anybody
has
knows.
been reassessed and it went up quite a bit. And last year the assessment was 36 million. This year the assessment is 49 million. And they filed a lawsuit to say it's only worth 28 million.
Went down.
So we're significantly apart in our evaluation techniques.
They do this basically almost every year.
Every 4 years, right?
Every 4
Well, the last time this was addressed was 2006, so we're talking 10 years now.
And they're in Beacon Town Central School District.
Correct.
So there's a lot of money
Correct.
towards the school.
They're not the only one that does this. Gas Electric used to do it quite often.
Who?
Gas
Gas.
Electric,
New York State.
I haven't seen them too much lately, though.
no.
No, and I did, and don't get me wrong, I moved Champlain North, Champlain South, and Benderson. And the only one squeaking anything is Champlain North. Benderson, we had a couple of chats, and I looked at some stuff. They were happy, and I was happy, and on we went. No?
Pyramid always fights.
Pyramid South, that management company didn't know what was going on, and it was Price Chopper who caught it. The guy was livid, because they did something with their taxes and that whole thing, and Price Chopper got caught carrying a heavy load on the assessment change. But we'll see.
Well, isn't Target standalone now?
Target is standalone. They own their own land, but, which I did not know until I hired this attorney last week, Target contributes a percentage of their profit to Pyramid.
Ooh.
That was not a factor in my assessment. That is a huge factor. It's a $10 million swing on the value of Sangertown, which is in New Hartford, which is another Pyramid Mall, in court right now. We hired the same lawyers trying that one.
That means the assessment for Pyramid, if had you known that, would have been 10 million more higher.
I don't know, it would have been higher. I
Higher,
can't tell
that's why
you what
I-
that percentage of
Yeah,
money
yeah,
is,
yeah.
but it would definitely have been a little bit higher than what I thought. And I'll be truthful, 49 might be a little heavy. You knew they were gonna negotiate.
Yeah, we had it at 41 in 2006. They got it down to 36.
Yeah.
And Beacon Town School lost about $500,000. We lost a considerable amount too, but.
Basically, it wasn't lost, because the school has to put the money aside. They have no way to generate revenue. So the difference between where I am, the 49 and the 28, the school's collecting on 49. They have to take that tax money and put it into a certiorari account. They didn't lose. They can't use it. It's just sitting in an account. So that when the case is settled, it goes, poof, it goes right back. So the school doesn't have that, like the fire district will. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the school's pretty much covered. What the difference is between then and here is that case took 3, 4, 5 years. this case is out of the box 6 months ago. There won't be those numbers in arrears that if this case is settled, that people pay back. It's going to be done ASAP.
But if they put
That
this,
is the methodology that we should approach as a town all the time. Get it done. Because then there's less money on the table going back and forth between entities.
Yeah.
but if all that money is sitting there in these school districts and they're basically not using it, so they're saying we're not harmed, but it's all the taxpayers that are carrying the load in the meantime because that revenue is not being accessible by the school to apply to their expenditures for a particular year.
True.
And
That's why you
so,
want to get rid of it quickly, so that those things don't sit in their accounts.
so do they just take that in their general fund, all of a sudden 1 year the tax rates are gonna drop out of sight? Because you've allocated an extra $10 million worth of assessment
Right,
throughout
well,
the school
yeah,
district?
right, exactly. That's why.
So they're still
In
gonna
the
have
reserve.
this.
They would, but it's in their reserves. It wouldn't be, it shouldn't be, operational.
They have a, schools have a.
Categorizing it wrong
Separate
accounting wise, but
thing.
it shouldn't be, it should be only in their reserves. So 1 year they're gonna, their bank account's gonna be healthy, so they're gonna have to say, yeah, we gotta cut it down, we gotta get, so your tax rate, yeah, you're right. Tax rate could go up and down based on it.
Well, I think going back to the solar
I
thing,
don't think the percentage of money is all that, well, other than somebody like a pyramid, the percentage of money for most of these isn't that much.
yeah. But going back to the solar thing too, I think one thing that gets me upset with all this is just knowing that the solar is not as economically feasible as what it's being touted to be. And yet now the town's embarking on this agreement with this solarizing association to go out and try to.
They're just, I think the town isn't so much wanting to go out and do it as assisting a group of people
I
trying.
understand that, but it's under the guise, they have to have a municipality put their name on it in order for them to go out and peddle this stuff to the people, that those who don't take it are gonna still pay higher rates of electricity if more people go with solar, because it's a public utility,
I agree.
but also it's the expenses of the town.
In my personal, I don't believe it's sustainable. That's personal.
Well, it's not, because it's not
Work-wise,
regenerating itself.
I'm ambivalent to it because, but personally, I just don't think the industry, it's good, but I don't think it's massively sustainable.
Furthermore,
But it's the expenses of the salaries of the town
And
people
I-
that are being involved in it, that
I
we're spending money on this
think-
for people to look at that.
another thing
I
about,
think, right, and I think that 20 year, I just think the industry, the technologies are the magnetic engine. I honestly don't see why somebody isn't cranking them out right now.
Mhm.
You know, honestly, the technology is going to change in 20 years so fast.
Right.
Look where we are 20 years ago, where we are today. Just pull out your phone, you know.
well, also, another thing with solar right now, I don't know if you've been following Nevada, but Nevada, which is a great sunny state, their government just changed the rules.
Well, that was, the topic there is net metering.
That's correct. Well, that's what the town was going to do, net metering.
Yeah.
And,
And for those who are not aware of what net metering is, everybody contributes so you get what you want, and then whatever extra you generate, you throw back into the pool. Well, that's fine and dandy, except that you're using all the hardware and hard infrastructure of your standard utility.
that would be nice, eh? Or the grid, national grid.
And there's no cost for that to the solars. Well, wait a minute, there's costs to maintaining and taking care of that grid.
That's
So-
a portion of your electric bill.
Correct.
Your hard line. So, and I differentiate, but you know what I mean. So what Nevada has said is, whoa, time out. Who's paying those hard lines?
Me,
Oh, the guy who can't afford the solar array.
correct.
Sure.
So the poor people are paying for it. No, we can't have this. It's not economically feasible for the demographic that we're trying to serve. So they stopped it. They said no more net metering. Well, that changed the parameters of the game at that level. And somebody said, oh, I don't want to play in the sandbox anymore. They packed up and moved out of the state. And that's going to go across, when more and more governments are understanding how this net metering actually affects the
Other
whole
people.
system,
And other people.
other people are going to stop and say, wait a minute.
I actually phoned the Public Service Commission when this whole array and things being talked about at the town level. And I was funneled through to an attorney with the Public Service Commission. And I was talking to him about solar arrays and solar city and different things. And I said, what would keep NICEAG, for example, from coming before the Public Service Commission and asking to slap a surcharge on anybody, a big monthly surcharge on anybody who has a solar array. He said, nothing. He said, let my words ring true to you. Buyer beware. That's the Public Service Commission that's helping, that's supposed to be controlling all of us, and that's what he had to say about it.
But the other thing with the net neutrality with the municipality, did anyone look into whether that additional income, because that's what was touted as the savings on the electricity, because it's really income to the town, is really considered outside income practice, therefore they'd have to pay tax on that as a municipality.
They may. That's an
Nobody's
aspect-
talking about that.
That's
so-
an aspect I don't know and didn't check, you know? It's a, amen. It's your,
That's how they word, I guess,
it's your
the
training and
rebates.
your background makes you look at things differently too, you know? And that kind of topic needs to be brought up, because, yeah, that's something Pat Bowman should say, hey, wait a minute. You know?
And down the line, the state
how
would
does-
say.
How does the state, even nice service should be saying, if you go down this path, even the state of New York should be saying, if you go this path,
Right.
this is what my.
This is gonna be exactly, I guess what I'm saying, I didn't just throw all those kind of words, but if you're a town of Plattsburgh and you're not in the utility business, but you're generating income from something that's not related to you as an entity, you have to pay tax on that money because it's not exempted, because all of a sudden you're in the business of doing something.
But it's not relevant to the.
To the ongoing practices of the municipality and that
No,
income.
it's not,
then
it's
has
not
to be
relevant
taxed.
to this detail. But we're talking about the solar array that was being proposed to the town of Plattsburgh. The town of Plattsburgh was not creating any income, it was not making payments.
It was
Well, that's what I'm saying, the definition of what that is.
They would get their energy at a cheaper cost. That's basically what it was. But the excess money and the excess generation would have gone to Solar City. However, what the fossil's saying is that this town had owned it, that could have cost.
Oh, yeah,
I
the
mean, that's where you were going with the idea of defining what it meant, even getting a legal opinion about what impact that would have on the town itself. How would you define that activity?
Right.
So basically, at this point, where we stand in time, it would appear that from a tax perspective, solar arrays are not equitable, and it's probably best not to go there unless you want to feel
I
good.
would rather, you know, all I want to do is collect the inventory, say we have enough files, so
Yeah.
something would have to be done, and it can be. But if you don't come to the exemption, I'm not going to be specifically assigning a value to it. It will come up when we do value on your home as a whole.
But you need,
Where that specific is in mass appraisal on the value of a home as a whole, it's very hard for me to tell you. 'Cause-
But you're going to
It's
get,
not enough that way.
but you're going to know.
Thank you.
no. Yeah.
Right, but there's a lot of people who